He bought a smart pet, not knowing it would have a night mode he has to service. The auction pit on Kepler 9 smelled like ozone and desperation. Adriel Kane leaned against a support strut, storm gray eyes tracking the lot numbers, flickering across the overhead hollow. 300 credits left in his account. The lien on the stalwart Wren came due in 72 hours, and the isotope run had paid half what he'd expected. He needed a quick flip, something he could move at the next port for double. Lot 47, the Rigelian auctioneer rasped, all four arms gesturing at a shipping crate being wheeled onto the platform. Felon-type companion unit, warranty void, as-is sale, starting bid $250. Adriel straightened. Felon companions went for 10,000 credits minimum, even used. He watched a greasy Vortex fence shift nervously near the crate, tentacles coiling and uncoiling around a stim root stick. Something was wrong with this picture, which meant opportunity. $250, Adriel called. The fence's eyes went wide with relief, no other bids. The auctioneer's mandibles clicked in disgust. Sold, buyer assumes all risk. Adriel handed over his credit chit, feeling the last of his safety margin evaporate. The fence practically shoved the crate's control pad into his hands. She's got some quirks, nothing permanent, probably. Probably. Look, my boss said dump the defective stock after the raid. I don't ask questions. The fence was already backing away, tentacles writhing. Just read the manual, maybe. Adriel hauled the crate through Kepler 9's grimy corridors to Bay 17, where the Wren sat like a rusted prayer. The freighter was ugly, a Consolidated Dynamics VX-90 that had been obsolete when his grandfather flew cargo, but she was his. He keyed the cargo ramp and dragged the crate inside, then cracked the seal. Orange fur, that was his first thought. Bright synthetic orange, like someone had dipped a sunset in candy coating. She was curled in the crate's crash foam, a slender figure in a white bodysuit that left nothing to imagination. Black hair framed a face that would have been merely pretty except for the eyes, huge, violet, vertical-slitted, currently glazed with sedation. Tall fox ears, black-tufted, lay flat against her skull. A thick tail, white-tipped and plush, was wrapped around her thighs. Adriel exhaled slowly. Whatever she wasn't defective. She was expensive, which meant stolen or worse. He checked the crate's documentation pad. Error logs scrolled past, dozens of them. Night mode activation failure, resonance protocol offline, core stability critical. Technical jargon that meant nothing to him. He stuffed the pad in his jacket and carefully lifted her out, surprised by how light she was. Her head lolled against his shoulder. Okay, let's get you somewhere more comfortable than a cargo bay, he muttered. He carried her to the Wren's tiny crew quarters, barely large enough for a bunk, a storage locker, and a fold-down desk. He laid her on the mattress, and her tail immediately curled into a comma. Adriel grabbed his least filthy t-shirt from the locker and a pair of shorts, then hesitated. The bodysuit had a seam. He found the release, and it peeled away like synthetic skin. He dressed her quickly, professionally, ignoring the way his pulse jumped. She was merchandise. He'd done this before with salvage cargo. Definitely. Probably not this pretty, though. Her eyes fluttered open as he finished. Violet irises focused on him, pupils dilating, and a soft electronic chime filled the cabin. Night mode engaged. A flat, synthesized voice announced from nowhere and everywhere. The pupils suddenly glowed with a faint inner light. Adriel started. She sat up with liquid grace, ears swiveling toward him. When she spoke, her voice was soft and precise, each word shaped carefully. You purchased me. I bought a crate. The contents were me. Her tail flicked. I am Ryla. What do you require? Adriel rubbed the back of his neck. Look, he gestured helplessly. I'm a smuggler, not whatever this is. I bought you to flip for profit. That's it. Her expression didn't change, but her ears drooped slightly. I understand. However, you should know that night mode is not optional. It is a Vortex control mechanism. A what? When they captured me, their surgeons implanted a neural core in my spine. She turned, and he saw the seamless port between her shoulder blades for the first time, a faint hexagonal outline in her fur. The core contains data they wanted preserved. The failsafe is sadistic. Unless the core receives regular bioelectric resonance through prolonged skin-to-skin contact with a compatible partner, it overloads. Terminal overload occurs approximately 18 hours after the last successful resonance. Adriel stared. You're saying if I don't... Yes. How prolonged? Minimum 30 minutes of sustained contact, full body preferable. The resonance requires... Her ears flattened against her skull. It requires intimacy, not mere touch. The cabin felt suddenly smaller, and if I don't... Seizures, neural cascade, death. Her voice remained calm, but her tail had gone rigid. I have 9 hours remaining. Adriel looked at the viewport, where Kepler-9's sickly green sun was rising over the station's dark side. He thought about the lean, the empty fuel tanks, the fact that he'd just spent his last credits on a woman with a bomb in her spine. Fuck, he said quietly. An accurate summary. Ryla stood, his t-shirt hanging to mid-thigh on her frame. She moved closer, and he could smell something like cinnamon and ozone. I will not force you, but I will ask you to choose. Service the core or let me die screaming. Those are the only options the Vortex left me. Her hand found his, fingers threading through his. The touch was warm, almost feverish. Why orange? He asked, because his brain was shorting out and it was the only question he could grab. Disguise, my real fur is silver. They dyed it, altered my ear shape, added modifications to hide who I was. Her violet eyes met his. Who I am. And who are you? Tonight, I am Ryla and I am dying. Her tail curled around his wrist. Tomorrow, if you let there be a tomorrow, I will explain everything. Adriel looked at her. Really looked. Past the orange fur and the slave brand barcode he could now see behind her left ear. Past the fear she was hiding behind that composed mask. He saw someone who'd been made into a weapon and a commodity, who was asking for the one thing she had no right to expect, a choice to live. Okay, he said. Relief cracked her composure. Thank you. But tomorrow you talk. Yes. He kissed her then, because she was still holding his hand, and because 9 hours wasn't enough time for slow. Her lips parted immediately, and she tasted like cinnamon. Her free hand fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and her tail wrapped around his leg with desperate strength. The Wren's cabin had one viewport. As Adriel laid Ryla back on the bunk, as she pulled his shirt over his head with shaking fingers as their bodies aligned and the electronic chime announced, "Resonance established." Earth's moon rose beyond the glass, pale, scarred, and impossibly far from home. Adriel woke to silence and the weight of Ryla's head on his chest. Pale station light filtered through the viewport, painting her orange fur in shades of amber. Her tail was still wrapped around his calf. He didn't move. The Wren's AI broke the quiet. Captain Disaster, the female voice drawled from the overhead speaker, you have 17 missed birth fee notifications, 1 lean reminder, and a very confused biometric anomaly in crew quarters. Not now, Wren. She's purring. I said not now. Ryla's ears twitched. She lifted her head, violet eyes blinking slowly, and he felt the rumble in her chest stop. Your ship talks. Wren's a consolidated dynamic stock AI with a bad attitude. Adriel ran a hand through his hair. She came with the ship. I am a marvel of military surplus engineering, Wren said, unlike this station which is charging you for breathable air. Ryla sat up, Adriel's t-shirt twisted around her torso. How long until departure clearance? Or I. Because I need coffee and you need answers. She slid out of the bunk with leonine grace, then paused, one hand pressed to the bulkhead. And because in 15 hours night mode will return, we should establish protocols. Adriel pulled on his pants. Protocols. I will not survive as a surprise. Her tail flicked once, sharp. Neither will you. The galley was a closet with a hot plate and a water recycler that groaned. Adriel coaxed 2 cups of black coffee from it, while Ryla studied the void warranty documentation he'd retrieved from the crate. Her ears kept flattening as she scrolled through the error logs. This is garbage, she finally said. There's no technical manual, just purchase terms and liability waivers. That's Vortex efficiency for you. Adriel handed her a cup. So explain. Start with who you really are. Ryla wrapped both hands around the mug, tail curling into a tense spiral. My name is Rylaravel Thren, Crown Princess Engineer of the Thren Dominion. I designed the hyperlattice relays that connect 17 Phelan colony systems. Adriel choked on his coffee. You're royalty? I was. 6 months ago, my yacht was ambushed in the Carina cluster. Vortesh stealth ships, boarding pods. I woke on an operating table. Her voice went flat, clinical. They installed the neural core to store the complete invasion lattice schematics. Every vulnerability, every failsafe, every emergency protocol. Then they added the resonance requirement as insurance. If I tried to remove the core or refuse cooperation, it would kill me. If I escaped, I'd need a partner to survive. Why not just clone you? Phelan neurology doesn't transfer cleanly. They needed my living brain to maintain the lattice data coherence. Her fingers tightened on the mug. Then they dyed my fur, altered my ears with gene sculpting, and branded me. The fence probably thought I was a defective pleasure model. He never scanned deep enough to see the core. Adriel leaned back against the counter, processing. So the most wanted woman in the Orion Spur is sitting in my galley drinking bad coffee, and I need to fuck me regularly or I die, yes. Her ears flattened completely. I am sorry. If I'd known the fence would sell me to an independent, I would have... Would have what? Died quietly? She flinched. Adriel set his cup down. Look, I'm not thrilled about the situation, but I'm also not going to let you die because some Vortesh surgeons are sadistic bastards. He met her eyes. We'll figure it out. Why? The word came out raw. You could ransom me. Turn me over to the Vortesh for amnesty. Trade me to the Phelan delegation for a fortune. Could. He crossed the tiny galley and tipped her chin up with one calloused finger. Won't. I keep what's mine, and I bought you fair and square, even if the sale was crooked. Her breath hitched. You're insane. Probably. He kissed her forehead, felt her ears twitch against his jaw. Drink your coffee. We're breaking orbit in 3 hours. They spent the departure window checking the Wren's systems. Ryla moved through the engine room like she'd been born there, violet eyes tracking every wire and relay. When she spotted a plasma conduit's microfracture that the diagnostic panels had missed, Adriel stopped pretending she was cargo. How'd you see that? Resonance frequency. She tapped her temple. Phelan hearing. We're sensitive to oscillation patterns. That conduit is singing 2 cents flat. If it ruptured, you'd have been vaporized before you heard the alarm. She was already pulling tools from the maintenance locker. I can patch it. Give me 20 minutes. Adriel watched her work, quick, efficient, humming something off-key under her breath. When she finished, she wiped grease on his t-shirt and grinned, and he realized he'd never seen her smile before. You're good at this, he said. I designed ships before they made me a commodity. The smile faded. Engineering doesn't require dignity. Hey, he caught her wrist. You're not a commodity here. You're crew. Her tail wrapped around his forearm, crew that comes with mandatory intimacy protocols. That's just a weird benefit package. She laughed, bright and startled, and then kissed him. It started soft, exploratory, and then her hands were in his hair and his were under the t-shirt, and Wren's voice crackled over the intercom. Hate to interrupt the moment, but Kepler 9 Customs is requesting a berth inspection. ETA, 6 minutes. They broke apart, breathing hard. Ryla's ears were swiveling. Vortesh? Probably checking for unregistered biologics. Adriel grabbed his jacket. Can you play dumb? Define dumb. Sit pretty, don't talk, let me do the lying. Her ears flattened, but she nodded. Owner and pet, I understand. The customs inspector was a bored human with a scanner wand and dead eyes. He swept the cargo bay, logged the isotope crates, then paused at the crew quarters hatch. Life signs indicate 2 occupants. That's my companion unit, Adriel said easily. Bought her at auction yesterday. Registration? Adriel handed over the void warranty pad. The inspector scanned it, frowned. Phelan type, you aware these require quarterly psionic balancing? She's low maintenance? Right. The inspector's gaze slid past Adriel to where Ryla sat on the bunk, tail curled demurely around her legs, eyes downcast. Looks expensive. Looks can be deceiving. Adriel stepped into the inspector's sightline. We good? The inspector grunted and marked the manifest. Cleared for departure. Try not to get that thing stolen. Black market's hot for felon models right now. When the hatch sealed, Ryla exhaled slowly. I hate this. I know, Adriel sat beside her. For what it's worth, you played it perfectly. Because I've had practice. Her voice was bitter. The Vortesh made me practice. He pulled her against his chest and her tail wrapped around them both. One jump at a time, we'll get clear of Kepler, then figure out the next move. And tonight we handle night mode. He kissed the top of her head between her ears. Together. Her arms tightened around him. Thank you. Stop thanking me for basic decency. In my experience, decency isn't basic. The Wren broke orbit an hour later, its tanks now full enough for a single desperate jump. The last of the isotope payment had been converted into high-grade fuel, leaving Adriel's account functionally zero. He watched Kepler 9 shrink in the rear sensors, storm-gray eyes hard, the risk settling in his gut. Somewhere on that station, a Vortesh fence was counting credits and wondering why his boss's defective stock had sold so easily. Somewhere farther out, Vortesh enforcers were probably already looking for an asset that had gone missing. But right now, Ryla was in the co-pilot's seat, tail draped over the armrest, showing him how to optimize the jump calculations. And when night mode's chime echoed through the cabin, resonance required in 30 minutes, she took his hand without hesitation. Bedroom or here? She asked. Adriel looked at the viewport, at the starfield stretching infinite and cold. Bedroom, I want to take my time. Yes. This time, when they came together, it wasn't desperation. It was choice, hers and his. And the stalwart Wren jumped to hyperspace with her crew tangled in each other, resonance humming through Ryla's spine, and Earth just a memory of home neither of them could afford to miss. The jump to the Vale cluster took 16 hours. Adriel spent most of it teaching Ryla poker in the galley while Wren narrated their terrible bluffing. Ryla won 4 hands straight, ears twitching with suppressed amusement every time Adriel tried to read her tale. That's cheating, he complained. You said no rules. She laid down a straight flush. I'm merely optimizing available data. Available data, my ass, you're counting micro-expressions. Yes. She collected the pile of dehydrated meal tokens they were using as chips. It's called intelligence. Wren's voice dripped sarcasm from the speakers. Captain Disaster got hustled by a princess. I'm recording this for posterity. Nobody asked you, Wren. I volunteer commentary as a public service. Ryla laughed, and Adriel realized he was staring. She'd borrowed one of his old flight jackets. It hung off her shoulders, sleeves rolled up, and she refused to take it off, even though the Wren's recycled air was warm. Her tail kept brushing against his leg under the table. What? She asked. Nothing, just, you look good. Her ears swiveled toward him. In your oversized jacket? In my oversized jacket. He reached across and tucked a strand of black hair behind one of those ears. It's a good look on you. She kissed him then, quick, sweet, tasting like recycled coffee and something uniquely her. When she pulled back, her pupils were dilated. We have 7 hours until night mode. I was thinking. Her tail curled around his wrist. We could wait, or we could not wait. Adriel grinned. Not waiting sounds better. Agreed. They made it halfway to the crew quarters before the Wren's alarm shrieked. Red light flooded the corridor, and Wren's voice went flat and urgent. Plasma leak engine room. Containment failing. You have 3 minutes before cascade. Adriel was moving before the sentence finished, Ryla right behind him. They hit the engine room at a dead run, and he could already hear it, a high-pitched whine that set his teeth on edge. The number 2 plasma conduit was glowing orange, hairline fractures spidering across the casing. That's not the one I patched, Ryla said. No, it's the tertiary feed. Diagnostic didn't flag it. Adriel grabbed the emergency toolkit, hands already steady despite the adrenaline. We need to vent the line and replace the coupling. 2-minute job if nothing goes wrong. Things always go wrong. Ryla was studying the relay board. The valve seized, manual override only. Where? She pointed at a crawl space beneath the primary reactor housing, barely large enough for a person, choked with cables and radiation shielding. There. But the resonance frequency is already destabilizing the magnetic bottle. If you're in there when it spikes, I'll be flash fried. Got it. Adriel shrugged off his jacket. Stay here. If this goes wrong, seal the bulkhead and jump to the nearest station. Her hand caught his arm, claws pricking through his shirt. No. Ryla, I can hear the resonance patterns. I'll know when it spikes before the sensors do. Her ears were flat, eyes blazing. You need me. He wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the crew quarters and do this alone, because the idea of her dying in a reactor breach made his chest tight. But she was right. Her hearing gave them an edge, and 3 minutes didn't leave room for pride. Fine, but you stay at the hatch, and if I say run, you run. Agreed. He dropped into the crawlspace, toolkit mag clamped to his belt. The heat hit immediately, dry, scorching, tasting like metal and ozone. Ryla's voice came from above, calm and precise. Valve is 2 meters ahead, left side. Resonance frequency is oscillating at 14 hertz. Stable for now. Adriel crawled forward, dragging himself over cables and conduit. Sweat soaked his shirt. The valve was ancient, a manual wheel lock that hadn't been serviced in a decade. He wrapped both hands around it and pulled. Nothing. 15 hertz, Ryla called, increasing. Adriel braced his boots against a support strut and pulled harder. The wheel shifted a centimeter, then another. His shoulders screamed, but the valve was turning, slow and grudging. 17 hertz, Adriel, faster. Working on it, the wheel spun free. He heard the plasma line vent with a hiss, pressure dropping. It's open. Grab the replacement coupling from the kit. The whine spiked to a shriek. Ryla's voice cracked. 20 hertz, get out now! Adriel lunged backward, scraping skin off his elbows. He cleared the crawl space half a second before the magnetic bottle fluctuated, and Ryla's hands were already hauling him up, her strength surprising. They hit the deck together as the containment field stabilized with a bone-deep thrum. Silence. Then Ren's voice, dry as dust. Congratulations, you're both still alive and moderately irradiated. Adriel started laughing. Ryla stared at him, ears swiveling, and then she was laughing too, high and breathless and edged with hysteria. They lay on the engine room deck, covered in oil and sweat, while the Wren hummed around them. You saved my life, Adriel said. You would have been vaporized before the gauges registered the spike. Ryla's tail thumped against the deck. So yes, I saved your life. Thank you. You're welcome. He rolled onto his side, and her eyes were already on him. Violet, luminous, pupils blown wide. The adrenaline was still singing in his veins, and he could see the same wildness reflected in her. Her ears twitched. We're filthy, she said. Completely. Night mode activates in 6 hours. We could clean up first. Her tail curled around his thigh, or we could not. Adriel kissed her, tasting oil and salt and desperation. She made a sound low in her throat, not quite a purr, not quite a moan, and climbed into his lap right there on the deck. His hands found the hem of his t-shirt, and she pulled it off in one fluid motion, orange fur slick with sweat and grime. Here, he managed. Here, she was already working his belt open, unless you object. He didn't object. They came together fast and frantic, her back against a bulkhead, his fingers tangled in her tail, and when she cried out, it echoed off the reactor housing. The electronic chime, resonance established, was almost an afterthought. Afterward, they lay sprawled on the deck, breathing hard. Ryla's head was on his chest, one ear pressed over his heartbeat. Her tail was wrapped around both their legs. That was insane, Adriel said. Completely. She traced a finger over the scar on his jaw. Yeah? Yes, she kissed the scar. You're reckless and stupid, and you risked yourself for this ship. It's my ship. Our ship, she corrected, if I'm crew. Adriel looked at her. Orange fur streaked with engine grease, violet eyes soft, ears relaxed for the first time since he'd met her. Something in his chest shifted, slotting into place like a docking clamp. Our ship, he agreed. Ren's voice was supremely unimpressed. If you two are finished consummating on my engine room floor, we're approaching the Veil cluster. Docking requests are required. Ryla sat up, tail flicking. I should replace that coupling properly. And I should file the berth request. Adriel stood, offered her a hand. But first, we're both showering, separately, because if we shower together, we'll never file anything. Her ears twitched with amusement. Separately, yes, that's wise. They showered separately. It took all of Adriel's willpower, because the Wren's shower was tiny and he could hear her humming through the bulkhead. When they met again in the galley, clean, dressed, Ryla wearing his flight jacket again, she was smiling. "What?" he asked. "I think I'm happy." She said it like a confession. I didn't expect that. Adriel pulled her close, her tail wrapping around his waist automatically. "Get used to it, princess. I'm full of surprises." "Like buying defective merchandise?" "Exactly like that." She laughed against his chest, and the stalwart Wren dropped out of hyperspace with its crew whole, its reactor stable, and its captain falling for an alien princess who'd saved his life with nothing but perfect pitch and reckless courage. The Vale Cluster Depot was a floating scrapyard held together by habdomes and misplaced optimism. Adriel docked the Wren in a berth that smelled like coolant and regret, then headed into the station with Ryla at his side. She'd tied her tail around her own waist like a belt, hidden her ears under a knit cap, and slouched in his flight jacket. Casual observer would see a human woman, maybe, assuming they didn't look too close. "You're sure about this?" Adriel asked as they navigated the market corridors. "I need sensor baffles for the core, otherwise eventually someone will scan deep enough." Her voice was low. "There's a Xenotech dealer 2 levels down, discreet." Discreet on the Vale means expensive. "I still have the meal tokens I won from you." He snorted. "Those aren't legal tender." "Then you'll have to negotiate." Her tail, still wrapped around her waist, twitched under the jacket. "I have faith in your smuggler charm." The Xenotech dealer was a Rigelian with 3 eyes and a stall packed with components that were either cutting-edge or stolen. Probably both. Adriel bought the baffles for twice what they were worth, and the Rigelian threw in a questionable data spike as a courtesy. They were halfway back to the Wren when Ryla stopped dead. Her ears, hidden under the cap, swiveled forward. "We're being followed." Adriel didn't turn. "How many?" 3, no, 4, Vortesh enforcers. They're trying to be subtle." "Vortesh don't do subtle." His hand found hers, squeezed once. "Walk normal. We'll lose them in the cargo tunnels." They took 2 turns, then 3. The enforcers stayed on them, close enough now that Adriel could hear the wet slap of tentacles on deck plate. His pulse was steady, but his mind was racing. If the Vortesh had tracked them here, it meant someone had flagged the core's unique signature, which meant... Ryla gasped. Her hand went to the back of her neck, and when she pulled it away, her fingers were glowing faint violet. "They're pinging the core, Adriel. They know." "How?" "The fence must have logged the sale after all, or they traced the station surveillance." Her voice was tight. "It doesn't matter. They're here for me." Adriel pulled her into a maintenance alcove, pressing her against the bulkhead. His mind was working triple time. 4 enforcers, probably armed. The Wren was 3 corridors away, but they'd never make it without a firefight. Unless... "Can you overload the core on purpose?" he asked. Her eyes went wide. "Not all the way. Just enough to fry their scanning equipment. Give us a 30-second window." "That would..." She stopped. Her ears flattened. "That would hurt a lot, and it might destabilize the lattice data." "Can you do it?" She searched his face, and he saw the exact moment she decided to trust him. "Yes!" "Do it. On my mark." He leaned out, counted the enforcers. 4, just like she'd said, spreading out to cover the corridor. He pulled the data spike from his pocket. Probably useless, but it had a plasma charge cell. "Mark!" Ryla's eyes flared violet white. The glow spread down her neck, and she made a sound like a wounded animal, low, choked, agonized. Every electronic device in a 10-meter radius sparked and died. The enforcers' scanners exploded in their tentacles, and Adriel was already moving, dragging Ryla with him. They ran. Behind them, the enforcers were screaming orders in Vortesh binary click, but their equipment was slag. Adriel hit the Wren's cargo ramp code without slowing, and they tumbled inside as the hatch sealed. "Wren, emergency departure," Adriel shouted. "On it, Captain Disaster." The ship shuddered as docking clamps released. "Also, you have 4 very angry Vortesh on the hull." "Shake them off." With pleasure. The wren kicked into a wild spiral, and Adriel heard the wet thud of bodies being flung into the void. He was already moving to Ryla, who'd collapsed against the bulkhead. Her eyes were still glowing, and the spinal port was visible through his t-shirt, a hexagonal outline blazing like molten metal. Ryla, talk to me. Lattice intact, she gasped. Core is stable, I think. Hurts. I know, I'm sorry. He pulled her into his lap, cradling her against his chest. You did good. Vortesh, no, I'm here. They'll send hunters. Let them. His voice was hard. We'll handle it. Wren's voice cut through, jumping in 60 seconds. Strap in or become wall art. Adriel carried Ryla to the crew quarters, buckled her into the bunk. Her breathing was ragged, pupils blown so wide there was almost no violet left. The glow was fading slowly, and she was shaking. Stay with me, he murmured, just a little longer. Not going anywhere. Her tail found his hand curled tight. Promise. The jump hit like a hammer. Hyperspace swallowed the stalwart wren, and Adriel held Ryla through the transition, feeling her heartbeat slow against his palm. When the shaking stopped, he pulled back the t-shirt to check the port. The glow was gone, but he could see something new, thin lines of silver tracing through her orange fur, like circuitry made flesh. Lattice bleed happens when the core is stressed. She touched one line, traced it down her shoulder. It'll fade, probably. Probably. I'm not exactly standard issue anymore. Her laugh was bitter. The Vortesh made sure of that. Adriel leaned down, pressed his lips to one of those silver lines. I don't care what they did to you. You're still you. Her breath hitched. You don't know who I am. Then tell me. So she did. Sitting in the bunk with his arms around her, Ryla told him about the Thren Dominion. 17 colony worlds, 3 billion Phelan citizens, a civilization built on hyperlattice relays she'd designed before her 20th birthday. She told him about the court, the protocol, the suffocating weight of a crown she'd never wanted. She told him about the ambush, the operating table, the 6 months of captivity before the fence bought her from a Vortesh black site. They were going to retrieve me later, she said quietly. Use the lattice to collapse our defenses from the inside. The fence thought he was dumping faulty stock. He had no idea what he sold you. A princess engineer with a doomsday weapon in her spine. Adriel kissed her temple, and the Vortesh just figured out she's not in their toy box anymore. Yes. Ryla's tail tightened around his wrist. They'll send hunters, specialists, and they won't stop until they recover the lattice or kill me to keep it from being extracted. Adriel was quiet for a long moment, storm-gray eyes distant. Then he stood, crossed to the storage locker, and pulled out a battered leather case. Inside was a plasma pistol, military grade, scratched to hell, and absolutely illegal in 6 systems. What are you doing? Ryla asked. Getting ready. He checked the charge, holstered it at his hip. Because when they come, I'm not handing you over. No. He turned back to her, and his expression was granite. I bought you. Stupid reason, crooked sale, doesn't matter. You're mine, and I don't give up what's mine. Her ears flattened, but not with fear. With something else, something that made her pupils dilate and her breath catch. You're still insane. Completely. He sat beside her again, pulled her back into his arms. But I'm your insane, and we're going to figure this out together. She kissed him then, fierce, desperate, tasting like gratitude and something deeper. When she pulled back, her voice was steady. The fence. We need to find him. Why? Because if the Vortesh traced me through his records, they'll want to silence him, and if we get to him first... Her eyes gleamed. He can tell us who ordered him to dump the stock, who knew what I was carrying. Adriel grinned, sharp and predatory. You want to track the chain upward? I want to know who's hunting me, and then I want to burn them. That's the best thing you've said all day, princess. He stood, offered his hand. Let's go ruin a fence's morning. Wren's voice crackled through the speakers. For the record, this plan is terrible, and I'm logging my objection. Objection noted, Adriel called. Now plot a course back to Kepler 9. We've got a rat to catch. Ryla's tail swayed as she stood, the silver lines still faintly visible through her fur. And if the Vortesh get there first? Then we improvise, Adriel squeezed her hand. I'm good at that. I've noticed. She leaned into him, and despite everything, the hunters, the lattice, the impossible odds, she was smiling. Our ship, our rules. Damn right. The stalwart Wren jumped back toward Kepler 9 with its crew armed, angry, and absolutely refusing to roll over. Somewhere behind them, Vortesh hunters were already moving. But Adriel Kane had spent 10 years smuggling isotopes past patrol fleets, and Princess Engineer Rylara Velthren had designed the most sophisticated relay network in the sector. Together, they were about to become a very expensive problem. Kepler 9 loomed green and sickly in the viewport. Adriel kept the Wren cold. Minimal emissions, transponder spoofed with a dummy registration Wren had pulled from some derelict freighter's backup. They slipped into a debris field on the station's dark side and waited. The fence operated out of Bay 32, Ryla said, studying the station schematic on the nav console. Her ears were swiveling, listening to something Adriel couldn't hear. But there's Vortesh comm traffic, encrypted. They're already here. Can you break it? Not without proper equipment. Her tail flicked in frustration. But I can triangulate the source, 3 signals all in the commercial quarter. One is, she went still, Bay 32. They got to him. Or they're waiting for us. Ryla turned, violet eyes hard. We need a plan. Adriel leaned back in the pilot's seat, fingers drumming on the armrest. The station has maintenance tunnels. Old Terran construction, pre-consolidation. Most species don't bother mapping them because the access hatches are human-sized. So we go in through the back door. Exactly. He pulled up the schematic overlay. There. Tunnel 7-J connects to the Bay 32 service corridor. We can bypass the main entrance entirely. Ryla studied the route, then him. You've done this before. Once or twice, he grinned. Kepler 9 Customs are terrible at checking crawl spaces. They suited up in the cargo bay, Adriel in his battered jacket and mag boots, Ryla in borrowed tactical pants that were too long, and a dark shirt that hid her tail when she wrapped it tight. She tucked her ears under the knit cap again, and in the dim light she almost looked human. Almost. If this goes wrong, Adriel said, checking his pistol one more time, you run. Don't argue, don't look back. Get to the Wren and jump. No. Ryla. I said no. Her hand caught his jaw, claws pricking his skin. We already had this conversation. I don't run anymore. He wanted to argue, wanted to lock her in the ship where she'd be safe. But the look in her eyes stopped him, fierce, certain, completely done with being cargo. So he kissed her instead, hard and quick. Fine, but stay behind me. Acceptable compromise. The maintenance tunnel was exactly as miserable as Adriel remembered. Low ceiling, recycled air that tasted like rust, conduits dripping something that was probably coolant. They crawled for 20 minutes, Ryla moving behind him with liquid grace despite the cramped space. Her tail kept brushing his leg. You're doing that on purpose, he muttered. Doing what? The tail thing. I have no idea what you mean. Her voice was supremely innocent. It's a completely involuntary physiological response. Uh-huh. They reached the service corridor hatch. Adriel cracked it 0.5 centimeter, peered through. Empty. He could hear voices from the direction of Bay 32. Vortesh binary click and something else. Human. Male. Terrified. The fence, Ryla whispered. Adriel nodded. They slipped into the corridor, staying low. The bay's door was open, and through it he could see 3 Vortesh enforcers surrounding a figure on the deck. The fence. Tentacles coiled in submission, all 4 eyes wide. Didn't know, the fence was saying. Boss just said dump the defective stock. I ran the standard scans. Nothing flagged. One enforcer backhanded him with a tentacle. The core signature is unique. You should have detected it. I swear I didn't. Then you are incompetent. The enforcer raised something that looked like a neural disruptor. Witnesses are inefficient. Adriel moved without thinking. He cleared the doorway, pistol up, and fired twice. The first enforcer went down with a smoking hole in its torso. The second spun, reaching for a weapon, and Ryla was suddenly there, a blur of orange fur and precise violence. She hit a pressure point at the base of its skull, and it dropped like a sack of meat. The third enforcer managed to raise its disruptor. Adriel tackled the fence out of the line of fire, felt the shot sizzle past his ear. Then Ryla was on the enforcer, claws out, and there was a wet crunch. Silent, Adriel stood, helped the fence up. The Vortesh was shaking so hard his tentacles were vibrating. You're the buyer, the human. That's me. Adriel kept the pistol-trained center mass. And you're going to tell me who ordered you to dump her. I can't. Ryla stepped forward, and the fence's eyes went wide. This close in good light, her disguise didn't hold. Orange fur, fox ears, violet eyes that were currently glowing faint warning. You sold me, she said softly, for 250 credits to a stranger without checking what I was carrying. I didn't know. The fence was backing up. I swear I was just following orders, my boss. Name. Crethal, syndicate enforcer. He said the stock was from a black site raid, told me to liquidate everything below a certain value threshold. I didn't ask questions, The fence's tentacles flailed. Please, I didn't know what you were. But now the Vortesh do. Adriel's voice was cold, and they came for you? They would have killed me. Probably. Adriel glanced at Ryla, saw the calculation in her eyes. So here's the deal. You tell us everything about Crethal, location, contacts, schedules, and we let you disappear. Don't, and we leave you here for the next Vortesh sweep. The fence talked, fast. Crethal operated out of a black site station in the Cauldron Reach, coordinating raids on fill-in assets. He'd acquired Ryla from a surgical facility after the Vortesh decided she was ready for field deployment. The plan had been to use her as a sleeper agent, plant her in the fill-in diplomatic corps, activate the lattice remotely, collapse their defenses from inside. But something had gone wrong. The resonance protocol had glitched during transport, and Crethal had panicked. Rather than report the failure, he'd ordered the fence to quietly liquidate the asset and scrub the records. So they didn't lose me, Ryla said quietly. They threw me away. And now they want you back before anyone figures out what you're carrying. Adriel lowered his pistol. Get out of here. Disappear. If I see you again, I won't be merciful. The fence ran? Ryla stood in the center of Bay 32, surrounded by 3 dead enforcers, and her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. They threw me away, she repeated, like I was broken equipment. Adriel holstered his pistol and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed against him, her whole body trembling. I'm sorry. Don't be. Her voice was muffled against his chest. I'm glad, because if I'd stayed in that facility, I'd never have met you. Silver lining. The only silver lining. She pulled back, violet eyes fierce. We need to move. More enforcers will come. Agreed, but first. Adriel bent, started rifling through the dead enforcers' equipment. Let's see what intel they were carrying. One enforcer had a datapad locked with Vortesh encryption. Ryla cracked it in 45 seconds, ears twitching, as she worked. Inside, deployment orders, hunter contracts, and 1 file marked priority asset recovery. Her face went pale as she read. What? Adriel asked. They've issued a sector-wide bounty. 1 million credits for my recovery, dead or alive, as long as the core is intact. She looked up. Every mercenary, bounty hunter, and opportunist in the Orion Spur is going to be looking for me. Then we don't stay in the Orion Spur. Adriel took her hand. Come on, I know a place. They ran back through the maintenance tunnels. Behind them, alarms started wailing as station security found the bodies. The Wren was waiting in the debris field, cold and dark, and they hit the cockpit at a dead sprint. Wren, jump prep, Adriel shouted. Already done, Captain Disaster. Where are we going? Dark Verge. Ryla stared at him. That's human fleet territory, restricted space. Exactly. The Vortesh won't follow us there. Not without starting an interstellar incident. He was already plotting the course. And the fleet owes me a favor. Why? Because I smuggled their admiral's daughter out of a prison moon 3 years ago. He grinned. Time to call it in. The Wren jumped, leaving Kepler 9 burning in their wake. In the crew quarters that night, when night mode chimed, Adriel taught Ryla poker strategies while his hands mapped new territory under his borrowed shirt. She won 3 hands and then stopped caring about cards entirely. Later, tangled together in the narrow bunk, her tail wrapped around both their legs, she whispered, Thank you. For what? For making me feel like a person again, not a weapon, not cargo, just me. Adriel kissed her forehead between her ears. You were always a person, Princess. The rest of the galaxy just forgot to notice. She purred against his chest, and the stalwart wren carried them toward Dark Verge, toward humanity's hidden fleet, toward safety, toward whatever came next. Together, Dark Verge was 3 jumps and 4 days away. Adriel spent the time teaching Ryla how to fly the wren, hands over hers on the control yoke, voice low in her ear as he explained the quirks of Consolidated Dynamics navigation. She was a natural, intuitive, in ways that made him wonder what she could do with a ship designed well. Pull up 5 degrees, he murmured. Feel that shimmy? That's the port stabilizer. It's been loose since I bought her. You should replace it. With what credits? The ones you'll have after we don't die. Her tail flicked against his leg. Optimism, Adriel. Try it. He laughed and kissed her neck, just below her ear, and felt her shiver. They'd fallen into a rhythm, night mode every 18 hours like clockwork. But now it was less about desperation and more about the fact that they couldn't keep their hands off each other. Ryla had started initiating, would corner him in the galley or the cargo bay with her ears flat and her pupils wide, and he'd never been happier to be ambushed. Wren complained about it constantly. On the 4th day, they entered the Maelstrom Nebula, a roiling soup of ionized gas and sensor dead zones that separated the Orion Spur from Dark Verge. Adriel cut the main drive and went to whisper-quiet maneuvering thrusters. Stay sharp, he told Ryla. The nebula plays hell with sensors. Can't see more than 2,000 meters in any direction. Perfect ambush territory. Her ears were swiveling, tracking sounds he couldn't hear. I don't like this. Nobody does, that's why it's effective. They were halfway through when Wren's voice cut through the cockpit. Contact. 3 ships, closing fast. Configuration matches Vortesh hunter-killers. How did they? Adriel was already diving the Wren into a thermal plume, using the superheated gas as cover. They can't track through the nebula. They're not tracking. Ryla's eyes were glowing faintly. They're pattern searching. Standard hunter protocol. Saturate the area, force the target to move, track the disturbance. You know Vortesh tactics? I designed countermeasures against them for 2 years. Her voice was tight, before they decided to cut me open. The Wren shuddered as a proximity mine detonated too close. Adriel banked hard, threading through a debris field of dead satellites and frozen gas. Behind them, the hunter-killers were spreading out, coordinated, efficient, closing the net. We can't outrun them in the nebula, Ryla said. I know. Adriel was scanning the sensor board, mind-racing. The Wren was small, maneuverable, but the hunters were faster. They needed an edge, something the Vortesh wouldn't expect, something human. His eyes landed on the hull plating schematic, old Terran construction, pre-consolidation, built before the Vortesh had ever met humanity. Ryla, can you access the external lights? Yes. Do it. I need full control individual bulbs. She didn't question, just routed the controls to his console. Adriel pulled up an ancient protocol he'd learned in trade school, back when instructors still taught Earth-standard signaling. Morse code. Simple, binary. Invisible to modern scanners because nobody used light for communication anymore. He started flashing SOS, human distress, then coordinates, false ones pointing deeper into the nebula's dead zone. What are you doing? Ryla asked. Talking to a ghost, he kept flashing. Dark Verge patrols monitor the nebula edge. If there's a human ship out there, they'll see this. And if there isn't? Then we improvise. He threw the Wren into a barrel roll, dodging another proximity mine. How's your chemistry? Excuse me? The cargo bay. We're still carrying 3 crates of kitchen salt from the Kepler run. He was grinning now, wild and reckless. You said you can hear resonance frequencies. Can you detonate a plasma flare? Her ears snapped forward. If I overload the charge cell with a harmonic pulse, yes, but it'll be visible across half the nebula. That's the idea. The hunters will think we're damaged, venting plasma. They'll close in for the kill. He met her eyes, and we'll be waiting. She understood immediately. You want to use the flare as a decoy. While we go dark and drift, oldest trick in the book. The human book. Her tail was swaying fast now, excited. The Vortesh won't expect it. Nobody expects humans to be clever. Adriel's grin was sharp. We're just stubborn and lucky. Let them keep thinking that. They worked fast. Ryla grabbed the salt crates and rigged a crude plasma flare using cargo straps, a charge cell, and her perfect pitch hearing to tune the resonance. Adriel cut all non-essential systems, angled the Wren into a slow drift, and kept flashing Morse until his fingers cramped. The hunters were closing. 1,000 meters. 800. Now, Ryla triggered the flare. It detonated in a brilliant blue-white flash, spewing superheated salt plasma across the nebula. The Wren went completely dark half a second later. No drive, no lights, no emissions. Just a cold piece of metal drifting through soup. The hunters swarmed the flare. Adriel watched on passive sensors as they converged, scanning the debris, searching for wreckage. They circled for 10 minutes while the Wren floated past them, invisible and silent. Finally, they moved on. Adriel waited another 5 minutes, then brought systems back online. Ryla collapsed into the co-pilot seat, breathing hard. That was insane. Welcome to human tactics. He reached over, squeezed her hand. Aluminum foil and kitchen salt. We've been fighting with garbage for centuries. It's brilliant. It's desperate, but he was grinning, and it worked. They cleared the nebula 2 hours later. Dark Verge stretched ahead, a fortified cluster of asteroid bases and concealed fleet positions. Adriel's chimed with a tight beam transmission. Stewart, Wren, this is Dark Verge Control. We saw your signal. State your business. This is Captain Adriel Kane. I'm calling in a favor from Admiral Khatri. Tell her it's about her daughter. A long pause. Then stand by for escort, Captain, and welcome to Dark Verge. Ryla was staring at him. You really did smuggle the Admiral's daughter. Her name was Priya. She'd gotten herself captured running medical supplies to a quarantine zone. I broke her out, got her home. He shrugged. Khatri said she owed me one. Figured now was a good time to collect. You're full of surprises. Stick around, Princess. You haven't seen half of them yet. That night, after night mode chimed and they'd collapsed together in the bunk, Adriel's back against the bulkhead, Ryla draped across his chest, her tail wrapped around his thigh, she said, I never thanked you. For what? For choosing me. That first night you could have let me die. Easier, safer. Her voice was soft, but you didn't. Adriel tilted her chin up, met those violet eyes. I don't take the easy way, Princess. Where's the fun in that? She kissed him slow and deep, tasting like cinnamon and salt, and the stalwart Wren drifted toward humanity's last stronghold with its crew tangled together, safe for the moment, and absolutely refusing to quit. The fleet was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Adriel counted 47 warships tucked into asteroid caves, their hulls wrapped in stealth plating that was held together by prayer and spite. Humanity's last stand, built from salvage and refusal to surrender. Admiral Khatri met them in the docking bay, a weathered woman with steel-gray hair and a prosthetic arm that whirred when she gestured. Her eyes swept over the Wren, then landed on Adriel. Kane, you look like hell. Good to see you too, Admiral. And you brought a friend. Khatri's gaze shifted to Ryla, who'd tucked her tail under Adriel's flight jacket and pulled the knit cap low. That's not just a friend, is it? Adriel stepped forward, putting himself between Khatri and Ryla. She's with me, that's all that matters. Actually, Kane, it matters a lot. Khatri's voice was flat. Because 3 hours ago, Vortesh hunters entered the nebula asking about a stolen asset. 1 million credit bounty, orange fur, felon features, spinal implant. Her eyes narrowed. Want to tell me what you've gotten yourself into? Ryla pushed past Adriel, pulled off the cap. Her ears swiveled forward, tail unwrapping to its full length. Princess Engineer Rylara Velthren. The Vortesh captured me 6 months ago and implanted their invasion lattice in my spine. Adriel bought me from a fence who didn't know what he was selling. Her voice was steady. And now the Vortesh want me back, before I can give humanity the one weapon that might let you survive. Khatri stared, then slowly, show me. They adjourned to a secured briefing room. Ryla accessed her spinal port, the hexagon glowing violet, and projected the lattice schematics as holographic overlays. Adriel watched Khatri's face go from skeptical to stunned to calculating. This is everything, Khatri breathed. Every node, every relay, every failsafe. And every vulnerability. Ryla highlighted a sequence. Here, the lattice relies on synchronized quantum entanglement across all nodes. If you can introduce a virus that desynchronizes even one node, the entire network cascades into collapse. You can build this virus? I already have the framework. I just need computing power in 48 hours. Ryla's ears flattened. But the upload will require direct interface through my core. The feedback surge might kill me. No, Adriel's voice cut through the room. We find another way. There is no other way. Ryla turned to him, eyes fierce. The lattice is biometrically locked to my neural signature. Anyone else tries to upload, the Vortex security protocols will fry them instantly. Then I'll stabilize you. He crossed the room, took her hands. You said the resonance protocol requires bioelectric contact. What if I'm touching you during the upload, skin to skin? Would that help? Ryla's eyes went wide. It might. The resonance could buffer the feedback surge. But Adriel, it's still risky. I know. He cupped her face. But I didn't bring you this far to watch you die for someone else's war. Khatri cleared her throat. If you two are finished being disgustingly noble, I have 47 ships that need this lattice dead. Kane, I assume you'll want something in return? Amnesty, for both of us. Adriel's voice was hard. And you treat her as an ally, not a resource. Done. Khatri offered her prosthetic hand. Welcome to Dark Verge, Princess. Let's go kill a lattice. The next 48 hours blurred. Ryla worked in a sealed lab, fingers flying across holographic interfaces while Adriel brought her terrible coffee and made sure she ate. The fleet's chief engineer, a grizzled man named Torres, helped refine the virus, and Ryla taught him felon encryption protocols in exchange. At night mode chimed, and they locked the lab. This time without urgency, just slow, deliberate exploration. Adriel learned that the base of her tail was sensitive, that she made a sound like a purr when he kissed the hollow of her throat. She learned that he liked when she used her claws, just enough to sting. We're going to survive this, he whispered against her fur. Promise? Promise. On the second night after they'd collapsed together on the lab's cot, Ryla said, Admiral Khatri forwarded me a priority communique this morning. It was broadcast on the open felon diplomatic channels. Adriel went still. What did it say? The delegation knows I'm alive. The bounty hunter chatter must have reached them. Her tail curled around his arm. They want me to return, take the throne. I haven't responded. Because I don't want the throne, Adriel, I never did. I want this, you, the wren, figuring out where to run next. Her voice broke. Is that selfish? No, he pulled her closer. It's human. Well, human adjacent. She laughed, watery and relieved. I like human adjacent. Good, because you're stuck with me. I know, she kissed him. I'm not complaining. The virus was ready at hour 47. Khatri assembled the fleet in the briefing room, captains from 17 ships all watching Ryla explain the attack plan. She stood at the hollow table, tail swaying, violet eyes bright, and Adriel realized he'd never seen her more alive. When she finished, one captain, a scarred woman named Liz, asked, And if the upload kills you? Then you proceed anyway. The virus is key to activate on my death. Ryla's voice didn't waver. Either way, the lattice falls. That's not happening, Adriel said flatly. Noted. Khatri cut through the murmurs. We jump in 12 hours. Kane, you're flying courier insertion. Princess, you're with him. Everyone else, you know your roles. Dismissed. They had 12 hours. Adriel took Ryla to the observation deck, a dome carved into an asteroid looking out at the fleet and the nebula beyond. She pressed against the glass, tail swaying slowly. I'm scared, she said quietly. But we're doing it anyway. Yeah. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, and her tail immediately curled around his leg. Because sometimes scared is all you get, and you do it anyway. She turned in his arms, kissed him fierce and desperate. If I don't make it... You will. But if I don't, I want you to know. Her voice broke. You made me remember what it felt like to choose, to be more than a weapon, thank you. Adriel kissed her back, pouring everything he couldn't say into it. When they pulled apart, he whispered, I love you, you stubborn alien princess. Her eyes went wide, then she smiled. brilliant, genuine, completely unguarded. I love you too, you reckless human smuggler. Night mode chimed. They ignored the lab, the briefing, the countdown. They had 12 hours and they spent every second proving that choosing each other over empires, over duty, over fear was the only choice that mattered. The transition from the asteroid's observation deck to the cockpit of the stripped-down courier ship, christened the Needle by a gallows-humored engineer, was jarring. The universe went from silent, star-dusted velvet to the humming, cramped reality of a cockpit that smelled of ozone and recycled air. Adriel's hands moved with practiced economy, flicking switches and running diagnostics. His knuckles were bruised, his eyes tired, but a fierce, protective energy radiated from him. Ryla sat in the co-pilot's seat, her own console alive with the architecture of the virus. She wore a simple flight suit, but the silver lines of the lattice bleed were faintly visible along her neck and arms, a permanent reminder of what she carried. Her tail was wrapped tightly around her own leg, the only outward sign of her tension. "Ren, you slave to this rust bucket?" Adriel asked, his voice a low rumble in the tight space. "The Needle has an inferior reactor, questionable inertial dampeners, and a personality chip that's offensively cheerful," Ren's voice replied, patched through from the stalwart Ren in the hangar bay. "I have assumed primary control. You're welcome." "Status of the fleet?" Ryla asked, her voice steady. "Admiral Khatri is moving the fleet to the jump point. 47 ships full of prayer and spite. They'll engage the Lattice's outer defense fleet the moment we start our run. They're buying us minutes, nothing more." Adriel met Ryla's gaze. The fear was still there, a living thing between them, but it was overshadowed by a profound, unshakable trust. He reached over and took her hand. "You ready, Princess?" "I've been ready since I woke up on your ship," she said, her fingers lacing with his. "I just didn't know it." As the Needle was magnetically launched from the asteroid base, a final, soft chime echoed in the cockpit. It wasn't urgent, it wasn't a demand, it was just a fact of their shared existence. Night mode was available. Ryla turned in her seat, her movements fluid despite the restraints. She unbuckled her suit at the collar, exposing the skin of her neck and the faint hexagonal port just below it. Adriel mirrored the motion, his hand coming to rest on her cheek, his thumb stroking her jaw. He leaned in and kissed her, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of recycled coffee and fierce resolve. It wasn't about servicing a core. It was about anchoring each other, a final promise before diving into hell. When they broke apart, the faint violet glow in her eyes was a steady flame. "Let's go kill a lattice," he whispered. "On it, Captain Disaster," Ren said, and then they were flying. The Vortex control node was a monstrous thing, a web of crystalline structures and weapon emplacements built into a rogue planetoid. 100 automated defense platforms guarded it, their point defense lasers weaving a net of instant death. No AI could calculate a safe path through it. But Adriel wasn't an AI. "They're tracking our drive signature," Ryla said, her eyes locked on her console. 300,000 possible trajectories. They've calculated all of them. "Good," Adriel grinned, a flash of predatory steel. "Let them." He cut the main drive. The Needle went cold and silent, suddenly just another piece of debris in a field of cosmic junk. The laser net wavered, its predictive algorithms searching for a threat that had vanished. "Give me a 5-second burn from the port maneuvering thruster. Aim for that dead patrol drone at Mark III, he commanded. Ryla's fingers flew. A short, sharp burst of plasma sent them spinning toward a piece of wreckage. To the Vortex sensors, it looked like a random collision. Adriel used the momentum, firing another thruster at an illogical angle, turning their path into a chaotic, lopsided wobble. He was flying like a drunk, and it was the most brilliant flying Ryla had ever seen. The defensive grid ignored them, its logic gates classifying them as insignificant gravitational noise. "We're getting close," Ryla said, her breath hitching. "They're starting to notice the anomaly. The node is powering up a directed energy weapon." "How long?" 30 seconds until we're in range for the upload. 40 until that weapon vaporizes us. "Ren, give me everything you've got. Full power to forward shields on my mark." He gripped the controls. "Ryla, get ready." She pulled the t-shirt he'd given her days ago over her head, leaving her torso bare. She looked at him, her violet eyes wide. Adriel? He was already shrugging out of his own jacket and shirt. I know, I've got you. 20 seconds. The ship bucked as stray shots hit the shields. Alarms shrieked. Adriel pushed the courier into a final, suicidal dive. Do it now! She pressed her hand to the port on her spine. The silver lines across her body blazed with white-hot light. A scream tore from her throat as the feedback surge hit, an agony that was both physical and digital. Adriel launched himself from his seat, crossing the tiny space and pressing his bare chest against her back, wrapping his arms around her. His skin met hers, and the bioelectric resonance of the night mode protocol flooded her system. The agonizing shriek softened into a choked gasp. The violent surge found a ground, a buffer. His strength became her shield. Upload at 30%, she gasped, her body trembling violently in his arms. Core temperature critical. Stay with me, he grunted, holding her tighter as the ship rattled around them. Stay right here with me. 70%, it's working, the cascade is starting. He could feel the heat pouring off her skin, the frantic, panicked rhythm of her heart against his ribs. He buried his face in her hair, whispering her name like a prayer. Virus uploaded, Wren's voice announced, flat and triumphant. Lattice desynchronization in progress. Also, the big gun is firing in 5 seconds. On the main viewer, the crystalline node fractured. A wave of cobalt energy erupted from its core, spreading through the network. Relay stations across the sector went dark. The Vortesh fleet, suddenly blind and disconnected, fell into chaos. The human fleet, humanity's last stand, tore into them like vengeful ghosts. Adriel hauled Ryla back into her seat, their skin slick with sweat. He threw himself into his own, grabbing the controls as the energy wave from the dying node washed over them. The ship screamed. And then silence. They drifted in the dark, the only light coming from the distant, beautiful explosions of the shattered Vortesh armada. Ryla was slumped in her seat, breathing hard, the silver lines on her skin fading back to a soft shimmer. Adriel's hands were shaking. He reached over and touched her cheek. You with me? Her eyes fluttered open, a slow, exhausted smile spread across her face. Our ship, she whispered, our rules. The epilogue was broadcast on every channel in the Orion spur. The stalwart Wren, scarred and battered but defiantly intact, floated in orbit around Dark Verge. Aboard the human fleet's flagship, Indomitable, a hastily arranged diplomatic meeting was taking place. On one side stood Admiral Khatri, representing a stunned but victorious humanity. On the other was a delegation of silver-furred Phalans, their expressions a mixture of awe and disbelief. And in the middle stood Adriel Kane and Princess Engineer Rylara Velthren. The Thren Dominion owes you an unpayable debt, the lead Phelan diplomat said, bowing low to Ryla. The throne is yours. Your people call for their hero. Ryla looked at the faces of her people on the holo display. Then she looked at Adriel, who stood beside her, his hand resting casually on the butt of his pistol, his expression giving nothing away. He was leaving the choice entirely to her. She stepped forward, her voice, clear and steady, carried across the galaxy. I am not the hero you need. You need engineers, builders, and leaders who will ensure this never happens again. My designs were used for war. My last act as a member of the royal house is to help you rebuild. She took Adriel's hand. But my future is not on a throne. It is on a consolidated Dynamics VX-90 with a bad attitude and a captain who needs me. Her tail, plush and white-tipped, curled decisively around Adriel's waist. The Phelan diplomat stared, speechless. Admiral Khatri, for the first time since they'd met, cracked a genuine smile. Later, they stood on the Wren's small observation deck. The ship was finally repaired, its accounts full, the lean a distant memory. Below them, visible through the viewport, was not a scarred moon or a sickly green sun, but the brilliant blue and white swirl of Earth. Humanity, no longer a backwater, was now a key ally of the Thren Dominion, its seat at the galactic table earned with smuggler's tricks and stubborn courage. No more running, Ryla said softly, her head resting on Adriel's shoulder. Where's the fun in that? He countered, but there was no heat in it. He squeezed her hand. We'll go where we want, not because we have to, but because we can. I like that, she purred, the sound a low rumble in her chest. That's a good protocol. He turned and kissed her, long and slow, a kiss that held no desperation, only promise. The stars watched, and the stalwart Wren with its crew of 2 finally had a heading. Home, together,